Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ba'd. Welcome back, everybody, to our second lesson. Before we begin, I want to remind everybody of something very important, and that is our study habits. You want to make sure that you are not moving on to the next lesson and you have not yet perfected the previous lesson. It's very important. We want to build a solid foundation. And take it from me, if you have a solid foundation, everything that you learn can be easily put on top. If it's shaky, then it's just going to get harder and harder, and you're going to get frustrated, and you're going to feel like you have not learned anything. So don't move to the next lesson until you have perfected the previous lesson. That being said, we're going to move on to today's lesson, number 2, and we are going to learn 3 new letters from the Arabic alphabet. They are the letters Jeem, Ha, and Kha. Looking at the diagram, they are these 3 letters. One thing that we notice immediately is that all 3 letters have the same body, right? Just like the letters Ba, Ta, and Tha. And what stands out is the dot placement. And we'll talk about that when we get to every letter. Let's begin with Jeem. Let's pronounce it. Jeem. Jeem. One more time. Jeem. Very good. This letter is written as you can see here. Line across, slight curve, and the dot will go in the middle, or beneath the head, if you want to call it that. The letter Jeem has a light sound to it, and we've been talking about that, and that means the back of your tongue is going to stay flat. And it has no air. Now, common mistakes. With the letter Jeem, in some dialects of Arabic, this letter is pronounced as Geem, right? A G sound, like the English G, like in the word game. We don't want that. Proper Arabic, we want to pronounce it as Jeem, like the J word, the J letter is in the word gym, right? So we want that sound, Jeem, right? And we want what? No air in this letter. No air. Because if you add air to this letter, it's going to turn to a CH sound, Cheem. And we don't want that. We want Jeem. So light and no air. Let's move to the point of articulation. Where is this letter located? It's a simple one. This is my diagram of the tongue. We've learned that we use the tip of the tongue for certain letters. Today we're going to find out that Jeem comes from the middle of the tongue. Now that's going to sound weird, but take it from me, it comes from the middle of your tongue. So when you pronounce it, Jeem, right? It's going to be from the middle of your tongue. There are other letters that go there. We'll learn them as we get to them. Moving along to identifying the letter. It's very important. So, recognizing the letter when it's in a word, the Jeem, what's going to happen to it? We're just going to take the top part of it, right? And we're going to keep the dot and place it beneath it. That's how the Jeem is going to look at the beginning of a word. When it's in the middle, it's going to what? It's going to have the dot on the bottom, and it's going to be connected from both sides. And finally, the Jeem will appear as its whole body with the addition of this extension indicating that it's connecting to the letter before it. If everything is clear, we'll move along to the next letter, which is Ha. Letter number 3, or number 2. Written in red is Ha. Little curve, write the letter. The way that it's pronounced is as follows. Ha. Ha. One more time. Ha. Very good. Now, some things to remember. Ha is also light. So don't say ha, ha, too bold. Back of your tongue needs to stay flat. Also, ha, unlike Jeem, has air. It has air. And the way that the air comes out, it's pretty sharp. It's almost as if your throat is constricting a little bit in the back and the air comes out with force. Ha. And what that does is it makes it different than an H sound. This is a common mistake. People pronounce ha like a letter that we're going to learn later, like an H sound. They say, instead of saying halim, they say halim, halim. That's a H, it's a soft sound. The ha is very sharp, right? The air comes out with force. And it comes, moves us to the next, part of this lesson, the point of articulation, where this letter originates. You can see here, this is a similar diagram to the alif. Remember I told you there were 6 letters that come from the throat? We learned alif was one of them. Now we learned a second, ha. So alif comes down here, right below the ha. So I'm just going to write it here, right? Above it is the ha. So it's a throat letter. And if you're an English speaker, this one's going to require some practice. And the more you practice it, the better you'll get. Right? And you'll be able to differentiate and pronounce different letters that sound the same, like ha and ha, or an H in English. How to recognize it? When it's written in a word, it's going to look exactly like the Jeem in all 3 forms. The only difference is that ha, as you can clearly see, has no dot. And that's how you'll be able to tell the difference. At the beginning, it'll look like this, no dot, in the middle, and at the end. If that's clear, we can move along to the 3rd and final lesson for today, or the final letter in today's lesson. And that is kha, written in green. What stands out and makes it different than the previous 2 letters, you can already notice it's the dot that appears above it. How was this letter pronounced? This letter is pronounced as the following. Kha, kha. One more time. Kha. Very good. Now, we learn our first bold letter. All the letters that we've learned since we started the lesson have all been light. This is our first bold letter. I told you that light means the back of your tongue stays flat, making your mouth open horizontally. Well, bold will be what? The back of your tongue is going to rise. And when it rises, it's going to kind of pull your mouth vertically up and down. So when you pronounce it, it's going to be kha. Now, I don't want to stress it, and you shouldn't stress it either. You don't have to say kha and open your mouth in that manner. It's just the tongue is rising, and it's making the inside of your mouth move in that direction. Kha. And so it's going to happen naturally. You just need to allow the back of your tongue to rise. Kha. Another thing that it has is air, right? Now, the air here and the air here will be important for us to identify the remaining throat letters, right? Because withholding the air in both of these letters will turn it into a different letter. And I'll talk more about that when we learn those letters. But for now, make sure that your kha has air. Kha. And keep it bold. Don't pronounce it light. Kha. Okay? Its location, pretty simple. It's another throat letter. So now we have 3 throat letters that we have learned. We have ha, which you've seen here is above the hamza, or the alif. And now we've learned kha. Kha is going to be the highest, right? So I'm going to use this as our main diagram. So kha is above the ha. It's the closest to that little dangly thing in the back of your throat called the uvula. Remember when I was teaching the kids, and I told them uvula, they didn't really understand what that was. So they said it's the punching bag. So if you want to call it the punching bag, it's the punching bag. But the kha is close there, right? The closest to your uvula, that little thing in the back of your throat. How to recognize the kha in the word? Very simple. It's going to look just like Jeem and ha with what? The only difference, and I know you know this, exactly. It's the dot. The dot will appear above it. This is how it will look at the beginning. This is how it's going to look in the middle of a word. And this is how the kha will look at the end of the word. Now you know how to pronounce each one of these letters. how to recognize it, and what to do and not to do. And inshallah, I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next lesson. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.